When Xiaod rushed out, Zhufei had disappeared. He chased out for 100 or 200 meters, seeing that he had no chance to chase this big nephew back, so he could only turn around and walk back. On the way back to the old man's study, Xiaod was in a particularly good mood, and he couldn't help but wonder, "Oh, I've got really good luck, and I'm worried about how to divert the attention of the old man. Zhufei is a coincidence." Luckily, he came to touch the old man's mold at this time and made him angry like a bird. It is estimated that the old man is only thinking about how to teach him a lesson well. Xiaod was proud of his heart. After returning to the old man's study, he said with a look of ashamedness, "Dad, you know that kid, he runs faster than a dog. I couldn't get him, mister." Su coldly scolded, "You are also a trash." After speaking, he immediately called the butler in and sternly ordered, "Notify all the subordinates. When they see Zhufei, the rebellious son, they will immediately bring him back to accept the family law." How dare the butler disobey him? He immediately bowed and said, "Master, don't worry, I'll pass it on." Elder Su waved his hand, and the housekeeper hurriedly left. Immediately, he said to Xiaod, "Hurry up and prepare for crisis public relations. As I said, the more vigorous the better. In addition, immediately rush to Oru's Hill. I want to see if Leona and Ziyu are alive. If not, bring me their dead bodies." Xiaod hurriedly nodded and said, "I know, Dad. I am looking at it." At this moment, Zhufei had already drove away from Su's house and drove all the way towards the airport. While driving, he took out his cell phone and prepared to call the person in charge of the crew at home. There are several private jets in the Su family, and Xin owns one. He is now in Australia, so the private jet stays in East Cliff. However, just as he was about to make a call, Xin's call came in suddenly. Zhufei hurriedly connected, and as soon as he came up, he cried and said, "Dad. Mom and sister are missing." Xin's heavy voice came from the phone. "I know what's wrong. I already know the situation. Where are you now?" Zhufei hurriedly said, "I am on my way to the airport, and I plan to go to Oru's Hill now. I will find mother and sister anyway." Xin immediately asked, "Listen to me, don't go to the airport. I just received a message. Your grandfather is now asking the entire Su family to look for you everywhere, ready to take you back to be dealt with by the family law." "Why did you offend him?" When Zhufei heard this, he immediately said angrily, "I heard that mother had an accident with Ziyu, and I always felt that this matter was inseparable from grandfather, so I went to there to question him. I didn't expect him to become angry. The second uncle had to slap me 100 on the spot. I ignored him and ran out." Angry, Xin immediately rebuked, and said, "You are in your 20s. Have you lived in vain over the past 20 years? What kind of character is your grandfather? Don't you still have a few words in your heart to deal properly with him?" Zhufei said angrily, but Xin immediately interrupted him. "But what? Your grandpa really cares about himself in this life, and he only cares about his own absolute power in the Su family. Once anything or anyone affects him, or affects his power in the family, he will deal with the other party without hesitation. Am I not the best example? You know that I'm not even your grandfather's opponent, so why do you stand up to him? Don't you want to stay at Su's house anymore?" Zhufei gritted his teeth and said, "If Mom and Ziyu were really killed by Grandpa, not only will I not stay in Su's house, I will even kill him and avenge my mother and sister." Xin was anxious, but then he deliberately lowered his voice and warned in a low voice, "Even if you have such an idea, you must not say it. The real man depends on doing it, not in words." As he said, Xin said coldly, "Don't worry, if things are really like what you said, it is not just you, I won't let him go. However, even if we father and son want to fight him, we must take a long-term view and plan to move later. Otherwise, if you are born before you die, how would you avenge your mother and sister?" Zhufei was silent for a moment, and then said angrily, Dad, I know. After speaking, he couldn't help choking up, crying and asked, Dad, when are you coming back? I really don't know what to do now. Zin sighed and said, I can't come back now. I take a plane back to Eastcliff from here. It takes more than 10 hours. But as long as my front foot leaves here, your grandpa will receive the message immediately on the back foot. When I got off the plane, I will be caught by the family and sent back to Australia, or they will directly arrest me and take me back to the Sioux family and place me under house arrest. Jufei asked helplessly, Dad, then what should I do now? I want to go to Ores Hill to find Mother and Ziyu. They are currently missing. At least there is still a possibility of survival. Zin thought for a while, and said, in this way, you don't want to go to the airport, just drive on the highway and drive all the way to Ores Hill. With that said, Zin calculated it again and said, from Eastcliff to Ores Hill, if you take the high speed, it will be about 1,000 kilometers. If you drive faster, you may be there in 10 hours. Jufei immediately said, okay Dad. I will drive directly to Ores Hill. Zin hurriedly said again, when you go to Ores Hill, you must be low-key and low-key. Don't try to call any Sioux family's power, because once they know you are in Ores Hill, they will definitely catch you. Jufei was dumbfounded. Dad, if I don't call on the power of the Sioux family, how can I find Mother and Ziyu? Zin said helplessly. My son, you can only trust yourself now, and others are unreliable at this moment. After speaking, he added, by the way, I heard that Grandpa has sent your second uncle to Ores Hill. He will definitely go by plane. He will arrive in Ores Hill 2 or 3 hours earlier. After you arrive in Ores Hill, you must be careful. Jufei suddenly felt very helpless. He choked and asked, Dad, do you think Mom and Ziyu are still alive? Zin was silent on the other end of the phone for about 10 seconds, and then he said, my son, as long as the matter has not been concluded, there must be hope. As he said, he continued, but you must remember, you must be prepared for the worst outcome. Jufei said solemnly, Dad, I know. Just as Jufei drove the car to Ores Hill fast, the crisis public relations of the Sioux family had already started. The overwhelming important media figures have brought the rhythm on the internet. Although each of them has different opinions, the core point they want to express is that the Sioux family is the victim. Leona and Su Ziyu are kidnapped. There must be someone else. More than 2 hours later, Shode's private plane landed on the first runway of Ores Hill International Airport. Coincidentally, at the same time, a private plane landed on the second runway of Ores Hill International Airport at almost the same time. This family's plane came over from New York, USA, flying all the way for more than 10 hours. After the plane landed, under the command of the tower, it parked on the apron dedicated to private jets. What's interesting is that this plane, the private plane that Shode was on, parked on 2 adjacent seats next to each other. This plane from the United States took the lead in opening the cabin door, and a Jewish man in his 50s stepped out of the cabin. He stood on the spiral staircase and paused for a moment, looked around, and whispered, Walter, my son, Dad will find you and take you home.